Well, let's start bigger picture first. AI and banking. You've been in banking for, what, 2 decades or more now.
Not far off that, yes.
How big a game changer is it? Put it in context.
It's a huge game changer. I mean, a lot of people compare it to being bigger than the internet age, and AI really changes things. I have a slightly different narrative. I think there's been a case where banks have been going through a digital transformation process. AI is now an accelerant on that. So I think at this stage it's an accelerant, but it will get to a point where it becomes a fundamental shift and really changes the way organizations operate and how agile they are, how we serve our customers and the products and services we deliver with our customers. But then ultimately, I think the future stage is it's not just going to be the interactions and the enterprise, but it's going to turn into a world where AI lets us deliver new products and services which we could never imagine, particularly when you look about how they let us do hyper-personalization and serving single customer segments of one. It's never been able to be done before, and that's really going to be quite a game changer.
So in the here and now, in terms of digital banking, we've all got some form of digital banking or other. What are the quick wins or the quick changes for AI for us as customers?
So the majority of effort across most enterprises to date has been more in the back end. And so things that you wouldn't see. So there's a lot of effort on how we do our code, how we run our operations. So what the customers will probably see as an impact from that is starting to get new features faster, new developments coming out the door faster, having less turnaround times. When you start to turn around and apply for something, the wait time will be less to get that back. So that'll be that first level of impact for customers. The next wave that I think is starting now is when firms start to do a little bit more customer-facing use cases. And those will predominantly start out in customer service realms, letting you interact with the bank at a time that you want, in a manner that you want. So you're talking about sort of when you're calling the contact center or chatbots or those sorts of things. That's the areas where it's going to start to roll out most noticeably. But then the next wave, I think, after that is when we really start to get that next level of intelligence and insights, where the AIs and the capabilities will start creating a level of explainability on behalf of customers. So there's examples where you could turn around and say, right now, you might just look at your bank app and say, find me all my transactions at Waitrose. Fairly standard, but in a future state, you might be able to say, how much money did I spend in cafes last month?
Oh, that's a terrifying thing, Antony.
Exactly.
Really?
Sometimes information's not a good thing, right?
But I take your point. Let's talk about some of the partnerships that you have and collaborations. And sometimes this is with the Magnificent Seven. I saw you guys with Microsoft recently. Yes. Sometimes it's with a small fintech startup. Yes. How do you manage that world?
I think the first point to sort of call out is having those partnerships is essential. As certainly at RAKBANK, we recognize that this is a complex and a wonderful journey, and it's not something we can go on our own. We'll go faster and we'll go longer in partnership, which is actually quite refreshing. Coming from Australia, the market there is much more, the banks have a tendency to say, I can do everything myself. In the UAE, there's a much more openness to partner, which is a lovely sort of change. So we are balancing between working with the large hyperscalers, the Microsofts of the world, to really get the best of breed technology and infrastructure and expertise to help us build our use cases. But there are also a huge amount of fintechs and startups out there who are now applying new innovative models and business cases around AI. We have to be a little bit careful in how we approach them because there is such a large amount. You want to always focus on, is this delivering value to our customers? Is this something that is solving a real customer problem? And if it is, and it's something that working with the fintech will accelerate it and do it faster, then we're all on board for having conversations with them and progressing it.
What about the jobs question? AI is going to steal all our jobs. We're all losing sleep over it. It doesn't matter what you do.
Yeah, look, I think I've got a slightly more positive spin on it. I think there is no doubt that the nature of work is changing. Any technological change causes the nature of work to change. I see that as a very positive spin, and at RAKBANK we're taking a much more optimistic view of it in terms of AI is enabling us to get our customers closer to our employees. It frees up our employees' time to spend more time doing the high value things, which is having those relationships and serving our customers. So it's changing the nature of the work, but it's really allowing our human workforce to be deployed to the really important things, which is serving our customers.
So in terms of the vision for RAKBANK as a digital bank, where does that go? What does a bank like RAKBANK look like in 5 or 10 years' time? What's going to be the same and what's going to be different?
Well, we've been going through quite a significant transformation over the last 3 years under the current leadership, and we've always had a vision of being the digital bank with a human touch. And I think that vision becomes almost more relevant now in this world. So we really want to be digital, but with that human touch. So I think the vision starts to translate into AI not being the be all and end all, but it's an enabler. It's an enabler for us to serve our customers. It's an enabler for them to get the products and services that they need to live their lives. People don't want to spend all day on a banking app to do things. They want to be able to go out and live their lives and be supported by the bank. So I think the future vision is really around enabling that customer through humans and AI working collaboratively.
We're so focused on AI at the moment. What other technologies are you working on that are going to have an impact? It's not the only game in town, is it?
No, it isn't. And then the other thing to sort of call out is everyone's sort of talking about AI as if it's the new kid on the block. AI has been around since the 70s, and it's been embedded in everything that you do in almost every facet of your life. Banks have been using AI for decades about modeling, about fraud prevention, all those sorts of things. There is obviously the new wave of generative AI, which is the step change. But again, it's a new version of an old technology of machine learning. So obviously we are focusing pretty heavily on that. I think that is one of the major games in town. Less on a technology front, but then there's enabling things. So as an example, open finance is now coming to the UAE. So less of a technology, but more of an infrastructure that is actually going to enable us to deploy things like AI a lot faster and better for our customers. And then I guess on the sort of the longer horizon, you do have those bigger pieces such as quantum computing and so on. They're not going to impact customers, I would say, in the next 5 years, but that's where there will start to be some interesting changes in the future.
Talk to me about open finance. I've seen you write about this before. What is it? Why does it matter?
So open finance is essentially a government-backed regime that enables banks and financial institutions and fintechs and other parties to share customers' data with the customer's consent to better serve our customers. So an example being, if I was creating a budgeting app and I wanted to get your account details from all of your different banks, because most people end up having multiple banks, to be able to say, here is your whole financial view. Open finance provides the secure and reliable rails and mechanism to get that data in to provide those goods and services. I think it's quite important for the industry because it encourages competition, and it really encourages a customer-first centricity, because you are now able to do, again, more for your customer, showing them their whole world.
Finally, looking at some of the gripes that we get, honestly, people write into the radio show, the TV show, they write on social media. They don't want to lose their relationship with their bank manager, with their relationship manager. They don't want their branch to close.
Yes.
They feel quite passionate about these things.
Absolutely. And I think, again, this comes back to the approach of how you choose it, the approach you choose to follow. Coming back to our core vision of being a digital bank with a human touch, your first touch point might be with the digital app in the way it is now, or it might be with some sort of AI assistant, but there is always going to be a human there when you need one. And that's a key principle that we always want to maintain and have fundamental to the way we deliver our services. So I think relationships are very, very important in banking because it's a business of trust. But it's about, again, coming back to that theme of freeing up that relationship and that interaction time for the high value stuff. If I'm trying to figure out to understand where one of my payments is that I was trying to send overseas and I haven't had an update on it, do I want to speak to a person about that, wait for them to respond, figure out, search the systems and come back? Or can I get an instant answer through some sort of more technological solution and then spend more time with that person talking about the bigger picture, my advice, my goals, and where I want to go? So I'm firmly of the belief that we can use this as a technology to enhance our relationships rather than replace them.
Last question, you touched on this. The UAE and what's happening here. You spent a lot of your career in Australia, you moved here relatively recently. Some of the differences you see here in the UAE as to the other markets that you've worked in, and for some of the legacy banks in the world.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of key points I'd focus on there. The first one is just the competitive dynamics. You know, I come from Australia where it's effectively an oligopoly. There's four big major banks and a bunch of small ones. And that does build in a little bit of laziness, to be honest. In a market like the UAE with a smaller population and a much larger banking sector, the banks have to work harder. And that drives a lot more innovation, that drives a lot more change and proactivity. So I think it's a really dynamic and fantastic environment, which probably leads into that point we were talking about earlier about that willingness to partner, the willingness to accelerate and try new things with fintechs. The other part about it is I think the central bank is doing a very good job here of driving the industry forward. their FIT program and their initiatives that are all around stabilizing the banking industry in a way that it can then interconnect more, provide better goods and services to its customers, is really creating an ecosystem, again, with the customer at the center, where we're able to build and deliver services to our customers much more rapidly than any other place. If you look at America as an example, it's still incredibly hard to transfer money from one person with one bank to another person with another bank. And so that's why checks and sort of fintechs like PayPal and others are so popular. You don't need that here because it's all part of the government endorsed rails and the payment systems. So the government's really pushing an agenda which drives the industry forward. And in my opinion, it's actually quite world leading in where it's letting the banks go.
Exciting times ahead. Good talking to you, Antony.
Thank you very much.
Thanks
Lovely.
for your time.
Thank you.
Dubai Eye 103.8.
Join the conversation.